Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a good breakout session, and I'm delighted to welcome you back to the final part of our event where we have our last two speakers, and I will hand over now to my colleague Jacob, who will introduce Laura.
Introducing our next speaker. She's an angel investor, a non-executive director for two firms, and the founder and CEO of Seep, a company whose mission is to shake up the dusty household essentials for the good of the people and the planet. Let me kindly introduce you to the virtual stage, Laura Harnett.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I'm just hoping is the slide back up there, or everyone else can see it, but I can't. Is that the...
Tivo, have you got Laura's slide? There we go.
Oh yeah, amazing, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for inviting me back, David. I remember being on a sort of physical stage for your very first funding focus event. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe even more than that now.
It was 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago, and at the time I was kind of a beginner angel investor. You know, I'd come out of the corporate world and was angel investing, and I was kind of sharing some of my early insights, and it feels like, you know, everything has moved on very rapidly. So I've continued to angel invest a bit, but the most important change really is that I've set up my own business. Now, a lot of people start with starting their own business, and when they scale it and then sell it, then they become angel investors. So it's quite an unusual journey to do it this way round. But I've got a few minutes basically to talk a little bit about my journey, and then I wanted to share a couple of slides, one about what I wish I knew when I started my entrepreneur journey, and the second one is what I wish I knew when I was still an investor. And you know, and hopefully some of those things that I've learned will help some of you in the room, because I understand quite a few of them are you're entrepreneurs yourself, and obviously many of you are probably women, which some of these will resonate hopefully. So a few minutes just about my journey. So I started off as a buyer for a food company called Compass Group. I then went into strategy consulting for consumer and retail brands for 10 years. When I had my children, I had to stop traveling, so I went in-house to lead the strategy team at Kingfisher PLC, which is the kind of parent company for B&Q and Screwfix. And then I moved to Selfridges, and there I was the chief of staff there and managed all of the digital program, lots of the investment programs that we had there. And while I was at Selfridges, I learned a huge amount. And towards the end of my time there, I was diagnosed and treated for breast cancer, which, you know, I'm safe to say, you know, very pleased to say that I'm out the other side. But it really does make you think about what you want. And I was roughly halfway through my career, and spent all my career in big corporate organisations, and decided that I wanted to kind of go and explore some other things. And so I left and became an angel investor with an amazing angel syndicate called Angel Academy. An Angel Academy support female entrepreneurs, but also encourage more women into angel investing. And for those of you who haven't come across Angel Academy and maybe raising money, they have you can pitch to them a few times a year, and I'd really recommend them. So I was doing some angel investing. I had my non-exec work, and I was doing a bit of consulting, and all of that allowed me to see how different a startup was, and the pace of decision making, and how exciting it could be compared to kind of my corporate sector experience, which was very slow decision making, a lot of kind of presentations that you have to share with other people to get decisions through. And so I had a sort of insight into that world, and then and I'd been sitting on this idea for Seep for a long time, you know. And if I just very briefly talk to you guys about Seep. So, you know, I'm an eco-conscious shopper. I walk around a supermarket, I pick the sort of better for the planet products like recycled toilet paper, organic food. But going down the cleaning aisle, you know, on one side you've got eco and methods, so some better sprays, but actually on the other side of the aisle are these household essentials, that's sponges, cloths, mops, dustpan and brushes, bin liners, and none of those, you know, very few of those have got any eco alternatives, and certainly not in the mainstream grocery channels. And so you really have to find hard, look hard to find them. So that was my idea for Seep for many years, not many years, but like 2 years. I'd had the idea, and I just thought, there's no way. I'm in my 40s. I've got, you know, a mortgage. I can't possibly set up my own business. And through that period of kind of meeting more and more founders, and then it was the beginning of lockdown, it just gave me the space to decide to go and set up Seep. So we launched Seep a year ago, and we're now a team of 4 and some freelancers, contractors helping us. We're doing, you know, sort of really healthy sales every month. We're selling direct, we're selling through retailers like Selfridges, and we've just won a grant from the Mayor of London to support some of our product innovation. So in not very long, you know, now I'm getting comfortable with calling myself a founder, really, and that's taken quite a while to get my head around that. But that's a really quick introduction to me. If I just move on to what I've learned, so the next slide, please. So, you know, there's so many blogs out there about, you know, how, so many blogs out there about how to succeed as an entrepreneur. You know, all of them are really useful, but these are the things that I think I wish I'd known a year ago or 18 months ago when I was first setting up Seep, that hopefully might be able to help someone else. And so I think particularly as a woman, I found that asking for help sometimes is really difficult. I don't like asking for favors. I like to think that I have the answers and that I can do this on my own. But I would say that every single time I've plucked up the courage and asked for help, it's come back, and you know, everyone has been so helpful. And often I would just overthink how to write an email, overthink about how to introduce myself. But honestly, just, you know, I think don't just lose the fear about reaching out and asking people to support you. And you know, I found every time I've done it, it's come back, you know, more than I thought it was going to. So I think that would be my number one thing. The number 2 thing, this event is all about fundraising, and you know, again, I felt really awkward about asking people for money and asking them to invest in me. I didn't really have the confidence in it, despite the fact I've been an angel investor. And I think what I realized is, and what I would do if I had to do it again, is talk to everyone about fundraising early and often. So if you think you're going to do a fundraise, don't just drop it into conversation with everybody, with family, with friends, with old colleagues, with people you've met in the pub. Like, you never know who you're going to talk to, and you know, and you never know what their circumstances are and whether they'd be interested. And I think I found that a lot of those, you know, just dropping it into conversation, you know, not really, you know, sometimes it's an intro that might come out of it, or sometimes the person might turn around and say, look, when you're fundraising, please keep me in mind. And so I would just encourage everyone to do that often, early and often. The next thing is about SEIS and EIS tax relief. I'm not sure how many of you know about this, but there's some really generous tax relief for investors into early stage businesses in the UK, and I would just use those really strategically. I was so desperate to raise my first round of funding, and I kind of just said yes to everybody. And actually, what I'm realizing is that it's a really great hook to get some kind of more serious investors in, who then can potentially follow you in future rounds. And so I definitely think about how you can use that to the best effect. The second, then some more kind of operational things. So you know, slow, and everyone loves that sort of hockey growth, like hockey stick growth curve in terms of sales. But sometimes, you know, we had that this year, especially during lockdown, and actually it can create more problems than it solves. You know, actually it gets your business to creak at the seams. You know, if you've got a service business or a product business, you know, be careful of really, really strong growth, because it's very difficult to keep up, and it has implications on your cash flow. You then need to buy the next set of products or invest more heavily. So I think slow and steady growth that you can manage and scale around, I think is probably healthier. And the last one, which I'm sure everyone knows about, is about ruthlessly prioritizing. As a founder, you know, you're doing everything. There's so many, you know, buck stops with you. You're doing everything from HR to legals to product to sales calls, and you know, I found just having 3 things that I know that are super important that I can't not do each week has really helped me. You know, those are the things that really are going to support you long term, and I think the thing that's really helped me there is having the right coach. And I've never really had an executive coach through my corporate career, but I think as a founder, especially if you're a female founder or a sole founder, I think it's crucial to have someone to hold the mirror up and to challenge you and to, you know, be your cheerleader when you're, you know, the going is really tough. So 1 year on, those are some of the things I've learned as an entrepreneur that I think will hopefully help you. And then moving on to the next slide, which are the things that I wish I knew when I was an investor. So I've made about 10, 15 investments. They're all relatively small. I'm not investing anymore because my focus is now really on Seep. But I think these are the things that I now know, having done angel invested, and also I've been on the other side of the fence. So the first one is to start slow and learn. You know, I got really excited. Every business felt really, you know, like it was going to be the next big thing, and I probably went too fast. I only have so much money to invest, and so, you know, and what they say is you really need to hold back, because you know, if a business is going well, you want to go back in and reinvest at a later stage. So start slow, learn, for those, you know, understand what you liked, what you didn't like about a business, and you know, you really do need to see dozens and dozens of decks to see what is good. And I think this is probably a good tip for the entrepreneurs out there thinking of fundraising. But you know, and it's links to the next point, which is around traction. But I think there are so many decks out there, really lots of them are way too long, 20, 30 slides. But you know, any evidence of you know, early traction numbers, you know, you realize that actually when there's good evidence, you see that in a deck very quickly. And if there isn't good evidence of traction, you know, you really have to hunt for those numbers. And so you know, that I've learned that over time. And that brings me, so the second point really is sustainable traction is everything, and the sort of hockey growth traction, because they've had a business has had a good run, is great, but actually are they able to maintain it? You know, looking out for organic growth, customer acquisition costs, good gross margins, you know, all those things are telling you that this isn't just a great idea, but it's got the semblance of a scalable business. And I think you know, those numbers for me are still really quite important in the early stages. The next one is about businesses. So, you know, and I think everyone wants to run after the next big thing, the next, you know, super fast grocery startup or whatever it might be. But I think, and this shouldn't be unsexist, it should be unsexiest. So this is my typo, but it's what I found is that of the portfolio that I've got, actually the real sort of steady eddies that are doing really well are sometimes the businesses that just aren't that sexy. You know, they're in relatively you know, less competitive fields. You know, they don't tend to be consumer businesses, and they do make, you know, if the numbers are there, they make good investments. And actually some of my investments that were the next big thing, VC backed, are the ones that haven't done so well. And then finally, and I think this is a good point for some of the entrepreneurs here, is that not all businesses are investable. And so what I've seen is that everyone kind of assumes that they have to rush out to VCs and try and get on every accelerator and all the angel investment programs. But actually some businesses are lifestyle businesses, or they're really, you know, they're profitable, good cash flow generating businesses. And you know, that, you know, raising equity funding isn't always the route through that. And I think I've learned that myself, and also, you know, since seeing how many entrepreneurs have struggled, how much time they've given up to go to fundraise when there are alternatives. And when I talk about alternatives, those are things like grants, some of the cash-based businesses like Clearco, who'll lend you based on your revenues. There are some, and there is also a way of trying to get to cash flow positive or some cash flow by bringing in some products early, and things like Kickstarter as well, which effectively are pre-sales, which can then help you fund your business. So, I think some of the businesses I've invested in hindsight probably aren't very scalable and probably shouldn't have done, equity rounds, because they're probably not going to exit. But I would just look hard at some of the other options that might be out there before you give up some equity in your business and spend a long time trying to get funding. So that's probably a wrap. Those are the things I've learned from both sides. I don't know if I'm on time, and whether there are any questions.
We've got time, so there's no questions in the chat yet, but if anyone has a question for Laura. But no, I really loved, Laura, the fact that, as I said when I wrote at the beginning, it was great to have you back as our first ever person who's come back, but come back in a different guise, and really interesting to hear your story, how you've done it kind of backwards, people might say, because you started out as an investor and then became an entrepreneur. But there's no forwards and backwards, there's no fixed rules in this. I thought there were some brilliant tips in there. I think one in particular that I'll pick up on now was where you said, slow and steady growth versus exponential growth. And it's so interesting because when you're getting out there pitching sort of, Series A, Series B type rounds, well, they want you to be doing that. And I guess part of the issue that you've got is you're going to be doing that off the back of the investor's cash that's being brought into the business, because, and this is something that, I always tell people, fast growth devours cash. Because you're, as you said, you're having to buy your next lot of stock. You've got customers sitting in accounts receivable and they haven't paid you. If you're a tech business and you're taking off, well, all of a sudden you got to hire in 20 new developers, and 20 developers at 80 grand a pop is an awful lot of money. That's 1.6 million gone pretty quickly. And even if you only think about it for the first 3 months in cash flow terms, it's still 400 grand.
Yeah,
it's
and it's a vicious cycle, right? So if you raise money, from a VC or someone that's expecting really high growth, then you're forced to grow, and actually it puts a huge amount of pressure back onto the business. And I've seen the kind of hard side of that, where it it's you've taken that path, and actually you then become a bit of a slave to it, and it means you haven't got the option of slowing down a bit.
Correct. Yeah. And if the business isn't delivering, the VCs will come in and as a very good friend of mine puts it, they'll be all over you like a rash.
They'll be all over you like a rash, or they'll drop you, which means there's no more money, and then you're really, that's even more tough. Whereas if you're building it sustainably with other sources as well, then that's less likely to happen. Yeah, exactly. So does anyone have a question for Laura? We've got about a minute and a half left. Otherwise, I'll ask another question. Laura, a lot of our audience are early stage entrepreneurs. You've touched on some of your things you wish you knew, but if they were to come to you and say, okay, Laura, what's your advice? I'm just starting out. What would you say? I'll take that some of these are, so really just starting out, and I speak to quite a lot of people who are at this stage, they've got a good idea, they're really tempted, they're just maybe taking some baby steps. And, I know that feeling really well when you're just starting out. And I'd say that the way that I did it was, and just decided to take the plunge. And once you've decided to take the plunge and starting to put money in it, then there's no going back really. But I just set yourself a time frame, which is, for me, I set myself 3 months, and I said at the end of that 3 months, I'll have a business plan, so I'll know if it's viable. I'll have a cash flow, so I'll know how much money I need to just get off the ground into a point at which I need to raise money. And if those two are both sat, I'll do some competitor analysis. And once I've got the answer to those, then I need to make a decision, and I set myself a timeline so that I didn't just drift into endless analysis and wondering. And I think once you've made that decision, then you just need to chip, as especially if you're the only one in the business at the beginning, which most people have, you've just got to chip away at it, a little bit every day. Just keep swimming. It's and ruthlessly prioritize. And I think, just know what are the 3 things that are going to help me get to that next stage of the business. And, it's easier said than done when you're, knee deep in things going wrong and people asking for things.
Yeah, brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you. We've had one more question, but we're out of time, I'm afraid. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much
Laura.
for having me, David and
great
team.
to see you. And I'd like now to, and I hope you can stick around to hear our next speaker. She's quite an inspirational speaker.